This screencast considers what we can do to ensure our students engage in formative assessment. Formative assessment is understood in different ways across the university. Here we look at two meanings and consider why they are both important and how they relate to summative assessment. However, critical to all this is the desire of students to engage with formative activities, and this presentation will introduce ways to ensure students do engage in activities which do not directly reward them with marks. First, let's look at the role of assessment in general. Rust explains that we actually assess students for quite a range of different reasons. Motivation, creating learning opportunities, to give feedback for the benefit of students and tutors to chart progress, and as part of the grading process to explain or justify marks, and as a quality assurance mechanism for both internal and external systems. We can see how these purposes help us to think about the differences between assessment as primarily a formative activity and assessment as foremost a summative activity. Rust expands on this. He says, "This is the distinction between assessment which is mainly intended to help the student learn and assessment intended to identify how much has been learned. Formative assessment is most useful partway through a module and will involve giving the student feedback which they can use to improve their future performance. In practice, and to varying degrees, most forms of assessment probably try to do both." He continues, "It is arguable that assessment in British higher education is too often focused on the summative and the accumulation of marks coming at the end of courses, while students would benefit more from opportunities to build on their strengths and learn from their mistakes through the feedback from formative assessment activities staged throughout their course or module." His suggestion then is that we need to pay much more attention to how we use assessment to motivate students and how we give them useful feedback that will help them learn. We should ask, how much activity around assessment in our teaching is focused on building learning compared with measuring it? Do your students get a consistent message about why and how we learn at university and the role of assessment in this? Let's try to clarify what we mean by formative assessment. As with feedback, there's a lot of confusion about formative assessment. Arguably that is because we tend to focus on summative assessment as the assessment that really matters. After all, it is the form of assessment where we nail our colours to the mast, where our students stand up to be counted, and where we make our judgments about students known. You could think of it differently. Formative assessment is the opportunity that really matters because it is the non-critical opportunity we have as teachers to make sure our students do well. Notice, however, this diagram has two circles labelled formative assessment. The first is spelt with a lowercase f, the second with an uppercase f. This represents the two ways people tend to talk about formative assessment. The first describes informal formative activities, those that habitually take place in the active learning environment, for example through discussion, challenges, experiments, debates, activities that challenge the learner to apply and evaluate what they are learning. Here, feedback is usually integrated, informal in nature, provided by the student themselves by reflecting on their learning, or by peers through discussion or group activities, or by the tutor by summarising activities. The second circle describes a more formal form of formative assessment. Here, formative interventions are specifically designed into the teaching to review learning and as an opportunity to formally give students feedback. Here, feedback is carefully designed in response to the low-stakes formative assessment. It is planned in so that it is manageable and useful and results in more likelihood of summative success. Finally, summative assessment, in the blue circle, is a formative intervention designed to evaluate the student's successful attainment of learning outcomes during a period of study, such as a module. Here, the feedback provides an opportunity to correct misconceptions and to advise the student about how they can improve based upon their current performance. Many academics report that they struggle to engage their students with formative assessment. They say their students are only interested in activities that award marks, otherwise it's not worth their time. Clearly, not all students are like this, but academics at Hallam and elsewhere recognise that engaging some students is really challenging. While this is a huge topic for the moment, let's look at how this applies to designing and delivering formative assessment. Race, in his book The Lecturer's Toolkit, is quite pragmatic. He says, while academics believe they need their students to engage in formative assessments, they actually need to develop intrinsic motivation in their students. In other words, the academic must develop a desire or want in their students. The reasons for engaging in something that has no marks attached to it must be clearly in their interest. This means you must spend time discussing the purpose of formative assessment activities with students before introducing them, and explain how the activity fits into the module and how it relates to their summative assessment. You can focus on benefits, enjoyment, and aspirations. So, formative assessment needs to be beneficial. It can help the student to develop their aspirations, connect the learning of theoretical and practical knowledge to its application. For example, through case studies, problem solving, exploration of professional dispositions and so forth. You can relate activities to future aspirations. Students see clearly how their involvement in an activity will help them achieve what they do actually want. Talk openly about what students want from the course and from life. Foster a sense of expertise by gaining experience through practice. Taking part in an activity allows each student to learn the knowledge and skills that they want, reflect on it, and understand its nuances. Formative assessment allows the students to experience good feelings. Taking part allows each student to practice what they are good at and provides them with opportunities to enhance their knowledge, skills, and dispositions in a safe and challenging and supportive environment. Formative assessment is an opportunity to receive feedback that matters. Taking part in the activity creates an opportunity for detailed feedback and reflection on their personal performance, their capabilities and understanding, and their use of knowledge, and how this will directly help them do well in summative assessments. An idea that perhaps we don't talk enough about is making learning enjoyable. So a formative assessment activity can make the feeling of becoming enjoyable. Students take part in relevant activities that allow them to practice the skills they will use in the future. There's an enjoyment to be had from knowing the detail, of becoming fluent. The activity is intrinsically interesting because it reveals new insights about the knowledge they have and how it can be used. Formative assessment allows a student to be proud of what they are achieving. Each student is driven to do a good job and take pride in what they are doing. They enjoy producing work that they can talk about or show others. And then there is formative assessment in group work. That's about enjoying being with people who share their academic or professional identity, values and aspirations. Students can work with others that matter to them, their peers, experts or real-world clients. The third area to think about is developing a professional identity, and how formative assessment can help students to develop that identity by actually doing the things they aspire to do, by being the person they aspire to be, by consciously learning to think in new ways, by becoming the person they aspire to be, by addressing problems and opportunities in authentic ways, the things that professionals actually do, or by belonging to their course, by sharing the formal and informal experiences that come with formative challenges. This is about making assessment, in this case formative assessment, student-centered. You can ask, how am I going to develop their interest in investing in this activity? While we might expect a student to be interested in every aspect of their course, we do actually have to make sure it is interesting enough to guarantee their active participation.